tutti, questa sera siamo con Beth Bahia Cohen, che è una musicista americana. Poi ci parlerà delle sue origini. Si è occupata di violino, principalmente è una musicista che ha iniziato a suonare col violino, ma suona anche altri strumenti, come vedete dal suo muro. E poi si occupa di musica modale, che è un po' l'elemento che collega tutte queste culture musicali che lei ha esplorato nel corso degli anni. Hello Beth, thank you for joining us.
My
And
pleasure.
I just explained to the people that are listening to us that your background, which is you're a violin player basically, but you also are interested in modern music in general, and you play other instruments that we can see
Yeah,
in your work
here on my
now.
wall. There they
Okay.
are, and
Lovely.
there are actually more than you see here, because
Okay.
there's some on the floor. Here's some on the floor. There's
Mm.
a baluchi sorud, excuse me, and a
Hmm.
yaili tambor.
Okay. There are quite a lot of them,
I
and
know, it's true.
so I will start with asking you. I mean, your musical background and your the instrument that you play and how you like encountered these instruments.
So that is a huge answer. So okay.
I guess.
It's
Yes.
really it's my whole life story, but and it's still unfolding now. Honestly, it's still happening. It's I feel like I swallowed some magic pill
Hmm. Okay.
many years ago, and it's still there, and it's still guiding me to different places, to new instruments, new cultures. But
Hmm.
anyway, there's no end really. So I grew up in New York, and I started playing violin when I was
Hmm.
about 7. Um, and I played violin all the way through high school. Mm, that was basically it. I was European classical, but I
Hmm.
also, as you mentioned, grew up with two different families from different cultures. My grandparents from my father's side were from Aleppo, Syria, Halab,
Hmm. Well.
and so every time I went to their house, which was often,
Hmm.
um, with my father was one of 8, so there were 8 families, grandparents, great uncles, various older
Hmm.
relatives, always there. 25 first cousins. It was like a tribe, and
Wow.
and and
It's a
every
little bit like our family. It's very extended one.
huge, right? And boisterous, loud, and happy,
Mm.
very happy. That particular family was a very happy family, and every time we went, there would be, we'd eat Syrian food. My grandmother was a wonderful cook. They would speak Arabic. There was always Arabic music playing in the background,
Hmm.
always. And I've told this story before, but as soon as the meal is over, we fold up the tables and they turn the music up louder, and everybody dances around the room.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's completely joyful. And so that is my experience of Arabic music, really. And then there were and my childhood. This was like the soundtrack of my of
Hmm.
my my childhood. Then there were all the live Arabic bands that played at parties, at weddings, at bar
Ah, okay.
mitzvahs.
In
Yeah,
the
so there was.
States, you mean? I mean, there
This is New
were
York, New
New
York.
York. Ah,
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, there is a huge community there, I guess.
New York. There are people from all over the world, and there's a huge community, Syrian Jewish community in
Hmm.
Brooklyn that we were part of, and they had certainly musicians who were really fine, and they played for all the events. So there was always a violinist. His name was Haki Obadia, and he was always the one playing as I grew up at all
Okay.
the events. And on my mother's side, my
Excuse me,
mother
but
was.
let me translate a little bit
Oh,
because otherwise it will be too long.
of course.
Ok,
Oh.
ho chiesto a Beth adesso di descriverci un po' il suo percorso musicale, che poi, come vedete, passa attraverso vari strumenti e attraverso varie culture musicali. Quindi ci diceva che lei è originaria di New York, ha iniziato a suonare il violino fin da 7 anni, principalmente come, diciamo, nell'ambito della musica classica, ma una parte della sua famiglia, specificamente la parte paterna, il papà, è originaria di Aleppo in Siria, E quindi fin da bambina c'erano queste riunioni familiari molto larghe, diciamo, in cui appunto c'erano tanti cugini, tanti bambini, e il sottofondo di queste riunioni familiari era musica araba, diciamo. Quindi questo, nonostante ha studiato la musica occidentale, però diciamo nelle orecchie c'era sempre questa musica araba che veniva ascoltata durante le riunioni familiari, quindi l'ha definita proprio una colonna sonora della sua infanzia, questa musica qua. Inoltre a New York c'era una grande comunità siriana ebraica, quindi di religione ebraica, e quindi c'erano anche dei musicisti che suonavano la musica tradizionale di quei posti lì, fra cui un violinista, Aki Obadia, che è stato la prima influenza musicale sul violino nel campo, diciamo, della musica araba. Ok.
Thank you. I understood most of what you said.
Good. That's good.
Nice. Okay, so and on my mother's side, she was born in the Ukraine. Her family is Russian, Jewish, and her family had music too. My mother was a pianist, so she was classically trained, and she and I used to play klezmer music together, violin and piano. And her mother and her sisters and she used to sing Yiddish songs. So, okay, so very different vibe, very different feelings, different language. Okay, so they're very far apart, I think. But from the Arabic violin that I heard growing up, I realized, hey, there's more than Bach and Beethoven and Tchaikovsky and Ravel. There's more to the violin. There are different ways. This is my first. It was just subliminal, but I got it that there are different ways of playing the violin. And as I heard, as I started playing klezmer music later, same thing, really different way of playing the violin. Okay. So, but then later I found out that they were very connected because they used the same melodic vocabulary, modal, maqams, or whatever you want to call them. They used the same ones. So I like to do solo concerts where I call it the art of the bow, where I play, I pull it all together, and I love to play an Arabic piece that I heard when I was a kid in Hijaz maqam, and a klezmer, doina or slohor or freilach in Hijaz, where they call fregish, but it's the same exact scale.
Okay, let me explain
Translate.
this. So, quindi l'altra parte della famiglia, la mamma di Beth, era nata in Ucraina e apparteneva a una famiglia russa ebraica. La mamma era una pianista, quindi diciamo con una formazione classica, però suonavano insieme violino e piano la musica klezmer, quindi la musica yiddish. E quindi sostanzialmente Beth è cresciuta fra due culture, una appunto, cioè che sembrano veramente diverse, no? Quindi una cultura slava, russa e quella siriana, araba, però in realtà andando avanti con gli anni ha notato che nonostante diciamo ci siano tanta diversità, no? L'elemento in comune diciamo poteva essere il violino, per esempio. Però nonostante la diversità di tecnica, di approccio, eccetera, comunque queste musiche avevano dei punti in comune. Infatti ci diceva che nei suoi concerti cerca di fare dei brani che appartengono a queste due diverse culture musicali, però mostrando come sono correlati. Ad esempio, il modo jazz del maqam è collegato a un modo, diciamo, che si usa nel klezmer, che non mi ricordo più come si chiama. So, how is the klezmer mode similar to jazz? How is it called? Once again?
Oh, it's called fregish.
Fregish, ok, questo modo è sostanzialmente lo stesso dell'ijaz che si usa nel mondo arabo, quindi nonostante queste diversità, però comunque c'è questa unione, questo punto in comune che è proprio la modalità, i modi. Ok.
Yeah. All right. So I really, this was kind of my musical world growing up, and although, my parents, we lived in New York, so they took us all the time to hear jazz, to hear blues, to hear folk music, American folk music, political mostly, and rock and roll, Renaissance and medieval music. My father played recorder, and Broadway musicals. We did a lot of going to Broadway musical shows, which I ended up playing on Broadway later. But anyway, this was the immersion, and yet when I'm still a classical violinist, and when I left high school, when I left home, I started thinking, wow, how can I play the violin and not just play in classical concerts for the same, basically the same audience. I really wanted to explore, and so I met up with an Irish fiddler, and he taught me by ear, first time learning by ear, some fiddle tunes. I started playing old time music, contra dancing, New England stuff, and a Celtic rock group, and I did study jazz. But then the big thing for me was I went to a place in California, Berkeley, called the Center for World Music. It doesn't exist anymore, and there it was like a microcosm of the world. It was beautiful. And
yes, I mean, I read something about this because I think you mentioned it.
I probably did in some interview,
but
right?
it was very interesting actually what they did there, and for the time I think it was very looking forward.
It was, and it was, I think it was modeled after Wesleyan University in Connecticut, that had a very big world music department that people really learned to play. And so this was amazing for me because I studied with T.N. Krishnan, he just passed away recently, South Indian violin player. And so I learned how to learn by ear, in South Indian music, at least they did then, that you sit cross-legged on the floor, you put the scroll of violin to your ankle, and you don't read music. This is the first time I really saw this is a very serious and very old tradition, and the means of transmission is entirely oral.
Okay.
Entirely.
Let me explain this, please. Ok, quindi la terza parte della sua formazione, del suo universo musicale quando era giovane, diciamo, era appunto la musica americana, perché i suoi genitori ascoltavano anche musica folk, Broadway, varie cose anche rock and roll, insomma, quindi diciamo c'era anche dentro la cultura proprio americana. Poi quando ha finito le scuole superiori praticamente ha avuto l'esigenza di esplorare e scoprire nuove cose, quindi di uscire al di fuori del violino strettamente classico, e ha incontrato un violinista irlandese che l'ha introdotta appunto alla tradizione celtica. Ma l'esperienza più significativa è avvenuta quando è andata in California a studiare in questo World Music Center, che appunto era un centro che si occupava di musiche del mondo, e lì ha incontrato un violinista dell'India meridionale, T.N. Krishna, che le ha insegnato il violino indiano. C'è una tradizione violinistica indiana che è basata appunto, quello che diceva Beth, proprio interamente sulla trasmissione orale, quindi non c'era lo spartito di mezzo. Si suona il violino diversamente perché si poggia sulle gambe, insomma viene suonato anche con una tecnica molto diversa da quella occidentale, ma questa è stata la prima volta in cui Beth si è confrontata con una cultura musicale che è basata interamente sulla trasmissione orale. Oral transmission, it had a meaning for you, I guess, so like it was changing perspective, basically, I guess.
Completely, because I grew up honestly reading music on the page, and I actually, at the beginning of my lessons with T.N. Krishnan, I asked him if I could write down what he was, because he would sing it or he'd play it, and he said, absolutely not. This is an insult to our tradition.
Oh, okay.
And he let me, yeah, that's pretty intense. And he let me, I recorded it. I recorded the lessons, so that's good. But it's still oral. Nothing was written. I didn't even try to. And ironically, I was also taking classes in West African music and dance.
Mhm,
And that was also completely oral,
mhm,
and we sat in a circle. We each had an instrument. We learned a piece orally, and
mhm.
then we moved one seat to the right or to the left, I don't remember, and we went all the way around the circle experiencing each instrument
Ah, okay, okay.
in the same piece, which was amazing. It was polyrhythmical, and it was that I actually tried to write down after the fact because I was so fascinated by the polyrhythms. Then I also studied and played three different kinds of Indonesian gamelan music.
Wow, that's
So,
also interesting.
oh my God, Balinese, Sundanese, and Javanese. Wouldn't you just? I would live in a place like that. That's where I want to live
Mhm.
because there are musicians from all over the world and teaching, and
Well,
we
this
learn.
is a dream, you know. I mean, now that you are telling this to like sharing this experience, I mean, for someone who loves music, it's like heaven, you know. I
Heaven.
guess.
It was heaven. It was
Like be
indeed
able to
heaven.
share things and like speaking musically with other people and
Yes,
trying to understand each other. It's like a wonderful thing, you know.
it's so important. It's so important for the world as well.
Yes.
Really important to build bridges like that. And yeah, it was like that. And also, I learned how how music is taught in other cultures because we were like children to a lot of these teachers because we didn't speak the same language. A lot of them, most of them, didn't speak English. So the only thing they
Wow. So
could
it's
do
just through music, learning through music.
only. So
That's
now
it.
with the gamelan, we were given a piece of paper with numbers. We
Hmm.
and we had this is our number one, this is two, and we did it by the numbers basically, right?
Okay.
But we weren't reading notation, but it was amazing. And also we learned how. So they just showed us very quietly, very patiently, and then they'd get all of us going on the gamelan, and the
Hmm.
teacher would sit down with his rabab and
Ah,
start
okay.
playing. He'd light up a clove cigarette, a kretek,
Hmm.
and the whole room's filled with this pungent smoke. And he'd play, and this other woman would sing, and we would be playing, accompanying them. And do you want me to stop so you can translate
Yes,
that?
maybe
Yeah, it's a
we are
lot.
accumulating a lot of things for me to
Okay.
translate. So, quindi ci parlava Beth della sua esperienza all'interno di questo World Music Center in California, dove appunto c'erano corsi di appunto dicevamo che era come un paradiso, più o meno, no? Perché in questo posto si riunivano veramente culture molto diverse fra loro, quindi abbiamo parlato della cultura indiana, del violino indiano, ma c'erano anche corsi di musica della West Africa, dell'Africa occidentale, quindi principalmente percussioni e danza.
Mm.
C'erano anche, lei ha fatto un corso di 3 diversi gamelan, quindi sono questi ensemble di strumenti tipo metallofoni, che sono utilizzati fra l'Indonesia, diciamo l'estremo oriente per così dire, no? E quindi Bali e Indonesia, insomma quelle zone lì. E quindi oltre a questo fatto che appunto, lei ha cambiato proprio la prospettiva sulla musica, no? C'era anche il discorso dell'insegnamento che era radicalmente diverso da quello occidentale, quindi non basato sullo scritto, ma diciamo essenzialmente solo la trasmissione orale e in alcuni casi diciamo anche la parola veniva meno perché molti di questi insegnanti non parlavano inglese, ma appunto la trasmissione avveniva attraverso l'ascolto e la riproduzione probabilmente, no? Quindi poi lei ci raccontava un aneddoto di questo insegnante di gamelan che aveva il rebab, quindi e fumava queste sigarette che riempivano l'aria
Mhm.
di questo fumo un po' così mistico, diciamo, ecco. Ok.
Yeah, that was a beautiful aroma.
Mhm.
And the other thing that I learned that was really powerful was that in Indian music, you don't just study the violin.
Mm.
You have to. I had to do singing classes because we had to be able to sing with solfege, the Indian solfege,
Ah,
sarigama padanisa. So that was really, and to sing all the different ragas because they were also, it's their melodic vocabulary was based on ragas, on scales,
mhm.
no harmony, and we had to learn the tala. We had to have a class separate in
The
tala, which
rhythm.
is the rhythmic cycle,
Mhm.
and then we also had a class in solka too, which is the drum syllables, spoken drum syllables, which actually
Ah,
You can perform. We performed them.
How is it called? The drum syllable?
The syllables of the drum. So
Ah,
ta, ki,
okay, okay.
takita, takita, takadimi. It's been a while, so I don't remember all of
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
But
but I mean, I remember some like tabla and concerts, and then they sing the rhythm that they are
yeah,
going to play. So it's amazing, you know.
amazing and so fast, so virtuosic and so fast.
Yeah, yeah, really, really.
Amazing, right? Yeah.
Hmm.
So then I realized that that's a very holistic. Even the people who were there studying the dance, South Indian dance, Bharatanatyam, they had to take the singing class. They had to take the tala class. Everybody had to know the whole musical system. So it wasn't just about your instrument. Here, I took violin lessons. I
Mm.
didn't take
It's very,
anything
I
else.
mean, focused on the instrument itself.
Yeah, separated.
While,
It's very, yeah.
yeah, I'm playing early music, viola da gamba, and they had a little bit this kind of understanding of music. So, for example, if you read the treatises of the 16th century, they don't write for an instrument.
Ah,
They write for voices,
oh,
or yeah, it's quite close to that, you know.
interesting. Interesting.
Of course, there is polyphony, so it's a little bit a different system. They still have modes there,
Right.
but I mean, the idea of being focusing on one instrument was not there at the time.
Interesting.
It
They,
was a little bit more like this complete, you know, kind of understanding of music, like
beautiful.
holistic, as you said. Okay, let me
Yeah.
explain this about
Yeah.
Indian music. Quindi quello che ci diceva era appunto che studiando musica indiana si è resa conto anche del fatto che il modo di concepire la musica non era molto diverso da quello occidentale, o quantomeno quello che aveva seguito lei fino allora, quindi focalizzato principalmente sullo studio dello strumento, della tecnica strumentale, ma che elimina altri aspetti come quello del canto, per esempio, o della comprensione delle strutture musicali. In musica indiana invece non è così, nel senso che lo strumento è una parte di una cultura musicale più ampia e quindi chi si approccia allo strumento automaticamente impara altre cose, come per esempio appunto il canto insieme al solfeggio che usano in India, che ha alcune sillabe diciamo particolari, quindi la conoscenza dei raga, che sono i modi indiani, dei tala, che sono invece le strutture ritmiche, insieme anche al solfeggio ritmico, che appunto, quindi passa tutto attraverso questa visione un po' più olistica della musica, e quindi lo strumento è una parte di un complesso. Diceva che anche chi faceva danza, per esempio, comunque studiava gli altri elementi della musica. Ok.
So after I went through that amazing experience, I remember thinking, well, my teacher invited me to live with him and his family in India
Mm-hmm.
and study with him in the very traditional way. And I thought about it and decided not to. But what I really wanted to do was, I had this vision of my whole life
Mm-hmm.
of collecting a palette of colors because I could already see between the Western European classical, the Arabic, the klezmer, the Indian, already there were so many Irish. There were so many different ways, so many different languages on one instrument.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, my goodness. So then my big question was, well, how is the violin played in all these other places? And in order for me to travel around, which is what I wanted to do, and
Mm-hmm.
study with different violinists, at that time I was thinking of jazz and thinking I would bring it in the context of jazz.
Ah,
Little
ok.
did I know that was blown away
Mm-hmm.
by Indian music and later on by Turkish music and anyway, Greek music too. I decided I had to clear up my technique because I didn't want to travel around and not be able to play what somebody asked me to play.
Ah,
I
ok.
had some bad training earlier and I was very tight. So I went to New York and it was a detour during which I got my master's in violin performance at Manhattan School of Music. I got very immersed in classical music. I had the most perfect teacher, Gerald Beale, who taught me how to play with ease. It was very exciting, and that's when I played on Broadway and all sorts of
Mm-hmm.
symphony and opera and ballet and everything. I was playing everything I could possibly play as a violinist in New York, and then I decided to move to Boston, and it was in Boston that I started I picked up on that idea that I had put off for 7 years. I'd forgotten about it even. And I joined a group called Libana, which is a women's
Mhm.
chorus doing world music, basically.
Ah, ok.
Initially, yes, they started with Bulgarian women's music and then
Mhm.
they kept going. And that gave me a platform in which to explore different styles of violin playing.
Ok, ok.
Okay. Um, but then one day along came these Hungarians from Budapest, and they were part of a revival then in
Mhm.
Budapest. It started in the 70s, where people discovered in Transylvania these Hungarian villages, and the music from Szék, from Mezőség, from Kalajdzség, all these places, the music and dance were preserved. Almost they were still there, and so
Mhm.
it became a migration of dancers and musicians going to weddings for three
Ah,
or
ok.
four 3 or 4 day weddings and then filming and learning and starting their own ensemble. So I benefited by this one group called Új coming to Boston and igniting me completely. Uh, and I just dove in and learned Hungarian village music from different regions and started a band and performed, etc.
Ok. Wow, that's already a lot.
I know, I know, I know.
Ok,
Okay, are we?
quindi appunto, dunque, la sua idea dopo aver fatto questa esperienza in California era quella di appunto accumulare dei colori diversi, quindi studiando varie tradizioni violinistiche per poterle poi riportare, inizialmente pensavo nell'ambito del jazz. Quindi la sua idea era questa qua. Dopodiché ha detto che praticamente per questioni di tecnica ha dovuto un po' aggiustare la sua tecnica violinistica per essere appunto in grado di poter suonare vari stili, ovviamente. Quindi ha preso un diploma in violino a New York per 7 anni, quindi poi ha suonato a Broadway, ha fatto cioè è ritornato un po' sulla musica classica, diciamo, comunque sul violino occidentale, per così dire. Dopodiché ha deciso di spostarsi a Boston da New York e lì ha incontrato un gruppo vocale che si chiamava Lebana, con cui ha collaborato, e loro facevano principalmente musica del mondo. Quindi appunto in questo modo è ritornata un po' su quell'idea primordiale, diciamo, che aveva di esplorare altre culture musicali attraverso il violino. Ma un'altra esperienza, diciamo, che le ha cambiato ancora la prospettiva è stata l'incontro con dei musicisti ungheresi che negli anni 70, in quel periodo là, stavano riscoprendo proprio la musica tradizionale che si suonava nei villaggi della Transilvania, che era rimasta molto fedele a quella che poteva essere la musica tradizionale ungherese. E quindi ha imparato la tecnica ungherese del violino e ha cominciato a suonare proprio musica ungherese grazie a questo incontro che è avvenuto a Boston. Ok. Very
Okay.
exciting, I guess.
I know, and you know what's funny is that it all was very organic, the whole process.
Mm-hmm.
So because then after playing Hungarian music for quite a while, I met some Greek musicians and they invited me to play with them. So then I was introduced to a whole other world of modal music from
Mm-hmm.
Greece. And there's a big Greek community in Boston and also on the West Coast. And I got very involved with learning the different traditions from different regions of Greece. And in that process, and then going to Greece. So now I started to travel to Greece after Hungary. And besides playing with violin players, because there's many different ways of playing the violin in Greece, the island music's really different from the mainland music in different places. Oh my goodness, it's really rich. But I discovered that there were bowed instruments besides the violin in Greece. So that was my first intro.
Oh.
And I started in my trips to Greece. I went many, many times. I started bringing instruments back as I discovered them. And I learned to play them, and I performed with them. Because in Boston and New York, I played for a lot of Greek dances and Greek dance symposiums and Greek dance competitions in California and all over the country, all over the U.S. And yeah, I learned Macedonian lira, Thracian lira, but with repertoire, so people dance too. So it was really
Yeah. Did
dance
you have?
music.
Did you meet like? Did you have a teacher there in Greece to teach you these instruments?
So the first instrument I got was a Cretan lira
Hmm.
that was given to me by Yorgos Avicinos, who is a violin player in Greece. Um, and he gave me a Cretan lira. So the next summer I showed up in Greece, I said, "Could you please find me a teacher?" And
Okay.
he did. He did. So I studied with one guy for a while.
Hmm.
Um, and But for the Macedonian and Thracian, no. I just listened to recordings and I learned the repertoire. And then there's a whole Black Sea. Uh,
The Kemenche of the Black
yeah,
Sea.
yeah. It's Karadeniz Kemençe in Turkey
Mhm.
and Pontiaki Lira in
Hmm.
Greek.
In Greek.
And I did actually study a little with Christos Tiktapanidis, who's a wonderful Pontic Lira player in New York. Um, and he didn't give it to me. He bought for
Hmm.
me a beautiful lira.
Hmm.
Um, and anyway, so that was the bowed strings of Greece, and I didn't know that they even existed. And I also realized that the violin had come and taken over in a lot of places. So they were disappearing, these instruments, and some of them are gone. Some of them are not gone, but they're endangered. I think pretty endangered.
Well, the lira in Calabria is really in this situation because I mean there are people playing it, but it's not really something that is alive. You know, like
Right.
there were ethnological field recordings in the 90s
Yeah.
with old, like traditional
Yeah.
players, but after that generation, okay, there are people that like, for example, me or other people that listen to recordings and try to play, but like the tradition had a cut, really,
It stopped. Yeah. And I think
So
that happened so many places. I think
yes,
that
we were speaking with Finnish people, Finnish guys. They have a like really a lyre,
yeah,
It's
like
called
a pluck.
yoiko. I don't know if you
Oh,
heard about this instrument. You should
no, no, no.
check it
Oh,
out.
yeah.
Then I will send you
Is
some
it
link.
a plucked instrument
No,
or
no,
a
no. It's a
bowed?
bowed lyre. It's
Oh,
like
my goodness.
like the Greek, ancient Greek lyres,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah,
they
yeah.
use a bow on it.
I love it. I'd love to hear about that.
Yes,
Please, yeah.
and these guys told me that there were field recordings in the beginning of the 20th century.
Okay.
People forgot this instrument, and then beginning from the 70s, people started to try to recover these traditions from like museums, instruments, and listening to the recording. And they tried to, and now it's back again.
Yay! That's
Yes,
great.
really. I was speaking with an Estonian girl like maybe 3 weeks ago, and she told me that now they make camps in summer. They have
Wonderful.
like 50 people that learn every year, which is
Wonderful.
wonderful, really.
Really wonderful.
Just check
Oh,
this
how
out.
exciting.
Very
Of
interesting.
course. I mean, listen, this is the same as spoken language is disappearing.
Yeah.
It's also important to keep them
The thing
happening.
also, this is also something that is very close to us because we have the Greek community.
Yeah.
And the big problem is that Greek has no use in normal life.
Yeah.
So it was used by the people that were living in the mountains until like the 50s, the 60s. They were shepherds. They lived there the whole life, and they used this Greek to communicate one another. But then right now, they are trying to make classes to teach people, but you don't have how can I say? It's not something that you really use in your normal life. So
Yeah.
this makes
Daily life.
things
Yeah.
uh, this make this makes things difficult basically. So, but
Sure.
anyway,
Sure. Yeah. That's
uh,
that's that's true about a lot of spoken languages that are disappearing also.
mm, mm,
So anyway, I'm still quite involved with Greek music, but it's been a long time of doing this, and I also then I found out about the Turkish kemençe,
mhm.
and I went to Istanbul and studied with. I was really fortunate to study with Ihsan Özgen, who
Wow,
is
the
the
master.
master,
Yeah.
the teacher of many, and he was a friend of my friends here. We had an ensemble called the Eurasia Ensemble. They, before I even joined them, they were very close with Isan, and so anyway, he took care of me in Istanbul my first trip, and then I discovered the yaylı tambur, and so then I started playing the yaylı tambur and studied with many different players and kept this whole. And the reason I went to Turkey, actually, besides the fact that I love the sound of the kemençe, it's so beautiful. I was playing a lot in Boston with Greek musicians, and they would say, take a ride or take a solo. And I honestly, that was, okay, now how do I do this? How do I improvise in Greek music? And I asked a lot of people, and it was hard to get, really, I mean, mainly the most common answer was learn people's solos, soon you'll be able to do it yourself. So, but I also knew that Turkey, Istanbul, there was a pedagogy around taksims and makams. So, okay, I'll go there. It's not the same as Greek folk music, but it's on a continuum. It feels
there are
connected.
Much common elements, very many actually. So
yeah, exactly. So I went to Turkey, and I went many times and studied, and not only with yaylı tambur players, but also with oud players, kanun players, because I was studying makam, so it didn't matter the instrument, right?
Yeah, that's what we said earlier.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I had amazing teachers, and I'm very grateful to all of them for being so generous. I felt like I was always treated so lovingly and with respect and honor, and people really loved that I was an American interested in and taking my time and spending money to learn this music, going to Turkey as often as I could. So then, of course, that led to rabab and Turkish rabab and the kabak kemane, which is another bowed instrument. And again, I got a Karadeniz kemençe. So started playing a lot of different bowed string instruments from Turkey, and then eventually started expanding to the Egyptian rababa. And wow. I got several of those and learned how to play. And I was at the time teaching at Tufts, and I was for a little while director of the Arabic ensemble there. And I had people play. I had about 3 or 4 of them, and they played together with percussion. So I had students playing them. I only saw the musicians of the Nile perform this music together. In the movie L'Autodrome, and also in Quebec, I think at a music festival I was at. But when else will people get a chance to even hear it or see it? I think it's just really wonderful, really just to show it, even if they don't even hear it. But the music is wonderful. And then somebody told me about, it was the L'Autodrome movie, which shows the possible path
of the gypsy people.
Roma. Gypsy, yes. From Rajasthan across. So, one of the places they went to was Egypt and Istanbul, and then Eastern Europe, then France, then Spain. In that movie, that was the path. And I realized I know music from almost all those places, but what about Rajasthani music? So I started checking that out, and I found that and I think the early instrument of, they say that this is a very old bowed string instrument. In terms of the history of the world, it's I don't know if you know it, it's really wonderful. Ravanhata. It's a coconut shell. It's behind me. It's behind me on the wall. I'm wondering if you could see it. I'll stand up and point to it. It's this one.
I see. Okay.
It's made with a coconut shell covered with skin. It's got a post, and it has sympathetic strings. So then I realized, oh my goodness, sympathetic strings. That's a theme. Yaylı tambur has sympathetic strings as well. And it also has bells on the bow. So that's another theme, because there are liras that are played with bells, like in Crete.
In Crete, I guess, yes.
Karpathos, as well, another Greek island. India, they sometimes wear wrist bells.
Bracelet for, okay.
A bracelet, yeah, for the bells. Or, in this case, it's on the bow.
Mm-hmm.
And then the one right next to it is the Egyptian rababa. And the Rajasthani went to Egypt, and there's no bells on the bow, and there's no sympathetic strings, but it is a coconut shell covered with skin.
It's the same instrument, basically. I mean,
yeah. Isn't it wild? And also another thing they have in common, they have a hank of horsehair as a string.
Yes.
Yeah. On both of them. And also I have a Moroccan rababa, which is that round one on the end there. That also has the string. It's a bunch of horsehair all tied together. Yeah. That you bow on. So then I started seeing all these connections, and my goodness, it's amazing.
Okay, I will summarize what you said, because it's a lot of things.
It's a lot.
It's a lot, but I mean, this is very interesting. Quindi, Beth, praticamente abbiamo fatto un po' il giro del mondo con gli strumenti, in questo caso, perché dal momento in cui appunto a Boston aveva incontrato dei musicisti greci, ha cominciato a studiare la musica greca, e da lì praticamente si è aperto il mondo degli strumenti, perché ha cominciato a capire che oltre al violino c'erano anche altri strumenti ad arco, quindi in particolare le lire dell'Egeo, insomma, e della Grecia. Quindi ha studiato lira cretese a Creta, ma anche ha suonato la lira della Tracia e della Macedonia. Poi praticamente cercava un modo per imparare a improvvisare anche, diciamo, con questi strumenti, e quindi da lì ha visto che mentre in Grecia diciamo questa cosa era abbastanza spontanea, tra virgolette, invece in Turchia c'era proprio una tradizione anche pedagogica correlata all'improvvisazione, e c'era uno strumento che è appunto la lira politica, quindi il kemençe turco. E quindi ha cominciato a studiare il makam turco con Ihsan Özgen, che appunto è uno dei più grandi, purtroppo è morto qualche anno fa, dei più grandi didatti e musicisti turchi che si sono dedicati a kemençe. Poi ha scoperto anche altri strumenti turchi che sono ad arco, come per esempio il jali tambur, oppure altri diciamo violini in uso in Turchia, a vari tipi di kemençe, e poi ha cominciato a vedere che appunto in altre tradizioni musicali, come quella egiziana per esempio, o anche in generale nel mondo arabo, c'erano degli strumenti molto simili, e ha cominciato a vedere delle connessioni fra questi strumenti, quindi il rebab marocchino, ma anche uno strumento che si usa in Rajasthan, che è molto simile ai violini, infatti, con la noce di cocco, che si usano nel mondo arabo, e quindi da lì appunto è nata questa idea di una connessione. E lei l'ha collegato, appunto, c'è un film che si chiama Lasciodrome, che parla appunto del percorso degli zingari dall'India, e della loro diffusione in tutta l'Europa, portandosi dietro la loro cultura musicale, ovviamente, e quindi fa vedere proprio questo percorso di diffusione dall'Asia all'Europa, quindi di una cultura e dei suoi strumenti. E quindi, diciamo, in questo senso appunto c'è una connessione fra tutte queste culture musicali che sembrano così diverse, ma comunque hanno una radice, probabilmente, o una continuità, diciamo, fra di loro. Ok.
Very good.
I try to summarize because it's very complex and very rich, you know.
Yeah,
but still, I mean, I agree with you that there is a common thread, you know, there is like a link. And as I told you, I'm studying early music also, and it seems like we tend to think that in the past people were just living in their own, like of, but there were a lot of exchanges, really. For example, I'm studying a composer from Calabria, 16th century. He wrote a madrigal, like a polyphonic composition using Greek language, because he was in Cyprus.
Okay.
And he decided to write this to honor his patron. So people traveled and exchanged and listened to things maybe more deeply than we can do today, because recording,
Right.
like we listen very superficially to things. And I guess at that time there were a lot of like influences around the Mediterranean, and so that's very interesting actually.
It was very, I mean, distances are much smaller, so from country to country still, so you can just I agree with that. And then I continued learning more because I live in Watertown, Massachusetts, which is the oldest Armenian community in the United States. And I got involved with and interested in Armenian music, and I found a kemancha. I actually have a couple of them, and started learning that tradition, which is really, really interesting. And then also it wasn't that big a leap to look at the Persian kemancha, which is a world of music that I've stepped into a little bit, and I know it's going to take a lot more, so I haven't gone that deep, but I did some playing of
they
it.
still have makams in Persia, or it's a different kind of?
It's a different system, and that's kind of that's why it's a little daunting for me, because it's a different system, but it's still modal.
Okay.
I think, right? And then I discovered the Romanian trumpet fiddle. And that is like the Stroh violin, and I have one on my wall, and that's with the trumpet horn, and that's I'm realizing that there is one place, really, I knew this actually, all over the world, or the recording world in the early 20th century, the instruments had horns on them as microphones, because they were recording into these horns, and the violins weren't loud enough, so they put horns on to direct the sound, and they put them on cellos, they put them on guitars, and they were and in every culture, they're Irish and Scottish and Arabic and everything.
Really? I didn't know.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. I have some pictures on my wall, people from different countries with this, and but the only country that actually kept it going was Romania. And I found one in Athens at a flea market once. I took it home, and there's a place called Bihor in Romania where they still play it. You could look it up. You could look it up on YouTube. There's families of players, and it's really quite a thing. And then also along came the Norwegian hardanger fiddle.
That's also interesting.
Yeah, and I have one and studied with several people and have learned a lot of repertoire. And to me, that's also musically mysterious, because I don't understand it quite, what's going on, but it's really beautiful. And the sympathetic strings theme is there.
Yes.
I've always been interested in where it shows up, where they show up, and why. On liras, on violins, on lots of instruments. With bows, sympathetic strings. I think a lot of it came from India, maybe, but because who knows where anything came from. And then the other thing that I've just recently started learning is the sorud from Baluchistan.
What?
I think I'll show it to you.
Okay.
It's a bowed string from Baluchistan.
Okay.
It looks like a skull, doesn't it?
Yes.
An animal. Horse, maybe, cow, and this instrument has sympathetic strings as well. And you hold it here with the bow, and the music is sounds like it's closely connected to Indian music, and it's really beautiful. It's trance music. They apparently, with a lot of this repertoire, they invoke certain deities, specific deities, actually. So that's another world. And I also play the Bulgarian godolka. Very difficult for me, much harder than the violin.
I guess it's quite difficult, but the Bulgarian guys are very virtuosic with that instrument. I don't know. I cannot imagine how because the system, I guess, is like the lira. You push the strings from the side, right?
Each string is different. So on the top string, the first finger, you push it with the fingertip from the side. Then 2, 3, and 4 are fingernails against the string.
Mhm.
which is like the kemenche, like
Yes, yes.
all the Greek liras.
Uh-huh.
And then for the lower strings again, you use your
The tip.
fingertip. And
Mhm.
what's interesting is when I got the Macedonian lira, the Greek Macedonian lira, it's
Mhm.
much simpler than the gadolka, but it's totally related because you play the top string with your fingernail, and then I think you put your finger on top of the low string,
Ah, okay. Wow.
not a fingernail again. So they're all kind of similar but slightly different, but definitely related.
Yeah, yeah,
Nice.
yeah. But I mean, I saw some videos of people playing the gadulka. They are very. I mean, I don't know how they do that, but
It's very different. It's really hard. It's
it's
amazing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 amazing, really. Okay.
I have a wonderful teacher, by the way, Nikolai Kolev, who's
He's living
Bulgarian,
in the
the
States,
U.S. Yeah,
U.S.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah. And
okay,
he,
okay.
I know him because both of us have taught for many years at the Eastern European Folklife Center, EEFC's Balkan Music and Dance Camps. So he's
Hmm.
taught and played, and I have taught as well,
Okay.
Greek violin. Yeah. So anyway, he's an amazing teacher and a wonderful player.
Mhm. Quindi abbiamo fatto un altro pezzo di Giro del Mondo perché appunto accanto agli strumenti di cui abbiamo parlato, I think I lost my...
I was talking about the Armenian
Ah, ok, ok,
connection,
ok, 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 that's right. Quindi,
the Persian.
ok, quindi diceva che appunto poi ha scoperto la musica armena e loro anche hanno un tipo di kemenche, proprio dell'Armenia. La musica persiana, che appunto diciamo, è un po' correlata a quella armena, ma comunque ha un sistema un po' diverso da quello, diciamo, del Makam, per cui è un mondo un po' più aperto, diciamo, in questo senso qua. Poi ha scoperto lo straw che è appunto questo violino con una tromba, che era utilizzato a inizio secolo praticamente, all'epoca in cui iniziamo le prime registrazioni, per, tra virgolette, amplificare questi strumenti che avevano un volume basso, come il violino, violoncello, quindi ci sono tutta una serie di strumenti che venivano amplificati con queste trombe, diciamo. E in Romania ci sono dei villaggi specifici che hanno mantenuto proprio la tradizione di questo violino straw violin. Poi abbiamo parlato dell'Hardanger Fiddle, che è un violino o una viola, diciamo, che viene dalla Norvegia e che ha la caratteristica di avere delle corde simpatiche. Quindi ha proprio la forma di un violino sostanzialmente, però ha delle decorazioni particolari ed diciamo, ha delle corde simpatiche, una specie di viola d'amore, per così dire. E poi uno degli ultimi strumenti che ha scoperto è questo strumento che viene dal Baluchistan, quello che abbiamo visto, che ha la forma un po' da teschio, diciamo, e che viene utilizzato per alcune cerimonie in cui appunto si evocano anche degli spiriti, quindi ha un significato un po' mistico. Ecco, so quite a lot of things. Ah, la gadulka. Sì, parlavamo anche della
Yeah,
gadulka,
yeah,
ok?
yeah.
Che è appunto questo strumento bulgaro che diciamo, è abbastanza complesso perché appunto prevede una tecnica delle dita della mano sinistra mista, diciamo, perché il cantino si suona come una lira, quindi premendo le corde dal lato, ma le altre due corde vengono suonate premendole con il polpastrello e ha una tecnica abbastanza complicata e lei lo sta imparando con Nikolai Kolev, che è un musicista bulgaro che abita negli Stati Uniti. È questo. Ok, so quite a lot of things.
Quite a lot of things.
Yes.
Yes.
So, do you have other instruments?
I do. No, I mean, a couple more.
Okay.
Actually, the tromba marina. Do you know about
La
that?
tromba marina, certo.
Yeah. I have one that somebody made for me in the corner there. You see how
Wow.
long it is?
Sì, sì.
But I played one at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. They have one, an old French one, really beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And they had me play it and perform it and etc. They have lecture demos there. It was pretty hard, but it was pretty wonderful to see what the overtone series is on a fingerboard, because that's all it is. You play harmonics with
You
your
just play
thumb.
harmonics on that
Yeah,
instrument, right?
with your thumb, and the bow is above, not
Hmm.
like this, like it.
Ah,
And
okay, okay.
and what's interesting is again to look at and see the connection between math and music. To take like the monochord, take
Hmm.
a string, know the length, divide it in half and in thirds, in fourths and fifths, etc., all the way to 16, and you see what the overtone series looks like on the fingerboard.
Hmm.
Where most of the music was composed for this instrument was at the top and the highest harmonics, and they were very close together
Ah,
and
okay, okay.
kind of hard to play actually.
Is there music composed for this instrument?
Yeah, yeah,
Ah,
yeah.
okay.
They had ensemble trombone marina or trumpet marine ensembles, and it's a very difficult instrument to sound good on. And it
I
died
guess.
out. It died out. So much for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, quindi un altro strumento è la tromba marina che abbiamo visto nell'angolo lì, che è uno strumento che praticamente è un monocordo, cioè ha solo una corda. It has one string, right? La tromba marina.
Yes.
Ok.
Yes.
E si
Yeah,
suona
yeah.
ad armonici, quindi sostanzialmente è uno strumento interessante perché fa vedere proprio come funzionano gli armonici su una corda. Quindi la musica veniva composta anche per gruppi di trombe marine, si suona principalmente in posizioni alte perché gli armonici sono più vicini. Insomma, è uno strumento anche che ha attirato la sua attenzione. Ok.
Late, late,
Okay.
late Middle Ages, early Renaissance, or late Renaissance maybe.
Sì, I think it's
In
something.
Europe,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Sì, sì, è uno strumento europeo che appunto veniva utilizzato fino al periodo barocco più o meno.
And
I think there
also,
is a Memling painting from the 15th century that has a tromba
oh,
marina, so
nice.
must be something late Middle Age, Renaissance, Baroque.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. It didn't last long, but what was interesting is that because they call it a trumpet marine, a marine trumpet, uh, so it's like they want it to sound like it's underwater, and they
Mhm.
have a peg on the side
Mhm.
that has a string to the one end of the bridge. So
Mhm.
with that, you lift the bridge, not totally off, not totally on, but kind of in between, so that when you bow it, it's it
Ah,
flaps and it creates a buzz, actually.
ok. Interessante. Quindi ci spiega un meccanismo che c'è sulla tromba marina, che è praticamente un ponte che si può regolare e che provoca una specie di ronzio. So I think they had this also in harps at the time. It's called
Oh,
gray harp, and it
okay.
has some kind of hooks, and it makes a buzzing sound also.
Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
how interesting. Wow.
I mean, we have this idea about like early music that was everything clean, but actually
Right.
not really.
Yeah,
There was a
buzzing.
very interesting. In a conference, there was an Italian lutenist that was talking about the lute. So we have this idea of the lute about that is like a very clean sound. They don't use nails also because they think they have this idea of clean sound. But actually, he said if we look at the sources, they must have sounded really different from what we think now. And there is also a guy who is a lutenist from Croatia originally, and he experimented a lute with a buzzing sound, because
Wow.
there are some sources that talks about this kind of sound on the lute. So
Wow.
our vision of early music is also something that can be rediscussed,
Of course, and
probably.
rediscovered. Exactly, yeah.
And in this, I think like traditional culture can be very useful to understand more that kind of like musical world, so to speak. They are probably more
Well,
close.
one question you asked me was how does all this traditional music relate to being
Yeah.
innovative? And right,
Yes.
how does what's the relate? And for me, I've always thought that it's really important to learn the source.
Mm-hmm.
I really think it's important to learn the source of different traditions. I feel like traditional music is the expression of a cultural psyche,
Mm-hmm.
and that's amazing to discover that. And I think I think it's really good to do. That's what I would do to learn the source of a musical language or musical languages, and create from that.
Mhm. Ok.
Like it's a
Quindi,
fountain. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, sì. Quindi Beth ci diceva appunto della sua relazione con la cultura, cioè del rapporto tra cultura tradizionale e innovazione. Ci diceva che appunto per lei è molto importante scoprire la fonte di certe cose. E questo può portare, diciamo, appropriarsi delle fonti, dell'origine delle cose può portare anche a un'innovazione un po' più consapevole probabilmente, no? But anyway, I think in some tradition there are very innovative also things, like microtonality, for example, which is something that right now in Western music they are looking at,
Oh, okay.
and
Good.
they had that in the Makam culture since 1,000 years, maybe, you know.
Right.
I
Right.
was what was very interesting because some times ago I got in touch with a guy from Philadelphia who is a keyboard player. He has Italian origins, and from his family name, I understood he was from Calabria because his family name was from here. And this guy is like born and raised in the States, and he got into like jazz music first, and then he discovered microtonality, like how can I say? It's not the traditional one, but right now he said that a lot of people are getting interested in subdividing the octave into more than 12 semitones, and they make mathematical things to understand this. But basically, I mean, we have this in our tradition. I sent him some of our traditional music, and it's already there, you know. Maybe this was just made out of, you know, like oral understanding and transmission, but it's there, you know. And right now I think also Western music is going towards that kind of direction, you know. So it's interesting how things come, you know, it's like a circle, you know, they come back, you know.
That's right. Right. A lot of places where the traditional music had stopped, as you were saying before, there's been revival since. And
yeah, I mean, people, luckily, I would say, luckily also for here, people at least they are open to traditional music, because like my father's generation was more like, we don't want that anymore. We are more, you know.
Right. Oh yeah, I know that.
So I mean, now my generation and the younger people, they are more open to this kind of traditional culture that we have, and in general to traditional music, I would say.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's good to be interested in that. And that was another question you had about what to do going forward and where traditional music should be. And I, just like I described the Center for World Music, I feel like everybody, I don't know if this will ever happen, in the world, when they're growing up, all children should be exposed to music from all over the world. And not only listening, but learning.
That's also very important, because if you do something, you like, it's like it comes more into you in some way, you know.
Yeah, it's a part of you.
It's a part of you, yes. And understanding that other culture make good things and nice things, it's very important.
Very important. More important than anything, because absolutely every culture is valuable. Every culture is equally valuable and beautiful. And I think we should be celebrating that. Absolutely.
I think as like American people have this vision, like maybe a little bit more than European people, you know, like we are more like we don't want to ruin the tradition and we want to stick to that. Maybe too much sometimes. While I think in the States there is more open-mindedness regarding these issues, I think.
Yeah, but there's the danger, and I'm speaking as somebody I just listed all these instruments I play, but there is the danger of being superficial about it, not
that's right.
So or dilettantish, and I try not to do that. I mean, I spent years and years and years in a lot of these traditions, and because I didn't grow up with them, with many of them, I feel like I have to make up for lost time. I just completely get immersed. When I played Hungarian music, I didn't play any other music for at least 5 years. I didn't want I didn't want to. So we have to, learn deeply. I think as
Yeah,
deeply as possible.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's also important. I will sum up what we said because
Oh yeah, yeah.
quindi appunto dicevamo della relazione con tradizione e innovazione, quindi il fatto che appunto tante cose ritornano, no? E quindi ci sono delle cose del passato che vengono riprese, un po' diciamo magari la riscoperta di tradizioni culturali che sono state un po' dimenticate, ma anche alcune cose che magari diciamo interessano alla musica contemporanea, però si trovano già nelle culture tradizionali. E poi diceva Beth che secondo lei sarebbe importante che le prossime generazioni si approprino delle culture musicali del mondo e le facciano proprie, non solo ascoltandole, ma anche suonandole diciamo immergendosi dentro. Diceva anche che c'è però il pericolo di fare queste cose in maniera superficiale, per cui diciamo sarebbe bene che ci si immerga proprio in queste culture diverse, quindi non prenderle in maniera troppo superficiale. Ok, Beth. I think we talk quite a lot. It was very interesting. Maybe we can catch up sometimes. And it was very interesting for me, at least, to be able to exchange these thoughts with you. I hope we'll keep in touch.
Yes, definitely. And if we want to have a part two, I'd be up for
I
that.
think
Yeah.
it could be. I mean, we can do it in sometimes because I mean there were a lot of things that I would like to ask you more. But it was very interesting, and I think it's a very interesting perspective that you brought about someone who discovered other cultures.
Yeah. Thank you.
And
It's been a wild ride. It's just been so fascinating. There's no end to it.
yeah,
There's
and
no
then I mean
end.
I can understand you when you say, I mean, when you the more you discover things, the more you see the beauty of other things, and you want more, I think.
Absolutely. Oh yeah. And also one last concluding
Yes.
thought is you also asked, the value of bowed strings.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and I think to me, the bowed string violin or liras or anything bow with a bow is a sustained sound, right? And it. Some people might say it's like the human voice, but
Mm-hmm.
I love the different timbres and textures of
Mm-hmm.
different bowed instruments and the different musical languages on them.
Yeah.
It's just so rich and varied and beautiful.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Every instrument has its own voice, really. That's
yeah,
right.
right. Yeah,
Ok,
yeah.
ok. Quindi l'ultima cosa che voleva dire Beth era appunto riguardava proprio gli strumenti ad arco in generale, e quindi il fatto che secondo lei gli strumenti ad arco esprimono proprio una voce particolare. Diciamo, si tende a pensare che uno strumento ad arco sia simile alla voce umana. È vero, però appunto ognuno di questi strumenti esprime una propria identità sonora, diciamo. Ok, thank you for
Okay.
this like travel around the world.
And you haven't heard one note of music.
No.
It's
Maybe
okay.
what I will do, I will post your concert that is found on YouTube, in which you play a lot of these instruments and
Where
violin
was that?
music.
Was that the Circle
I,
World Arts or Revels?
no, I think the World Arts. I think
Circle World
yes.
Arts. I did a yeah. Uh-huh.
So there was a lot of violin, of course, but there was also other instruments that you played there.
Yeah. Nice.
So to give an idea of what you do, and also beautiful music. And I hope there will be a part two also, so we can catch up and speak a little bit more about other topics that we didn't have the time to talk about today.
Lovely. Okay.
Grazie,
Let me know.
Beth. Un saluto
Thank
all'Italia.
you. Okay. Greetings from Boston.
Grazie. And see you soon, okay?
Okay. I think
Ciao,
so.
ciao.
Bye.
Grazie.
Bye.
As part of my musical journeying, I got very involved with Renaissance and medieval music.